In this video, I'm going to explore Brattle Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is perhaps the most famous street in the city of Cambridge. Check it out. So here we are looking at Brattle Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the pin is dropped here in the middle of Brattle Street. And it starts in Harvard Square. You can see on the map the Harvard Square T station right next to Harvard Yard. And this is actually the actual beginning of Brattle Street. So the street starts in a commercial district, Harvard Square. And as you travel down Brattle, it makes a right turn and continues out to the residential area of West Cambridge, passing by Harvard and eventually arriving at this point where Ash and Mason meet Brattle Street in the residential district. And it meanders its way down past Lowell Park and Fresh Pond Parkway here and crosses over. And the last piece takes you to where Brattle Street meets Mount Auburn Street. So that's the street, and it's perhaps the most famous street in all of Cambridge. And we're going to learn more about it by taking a walk down Brattle Street. So let's just do that right now. So here we are where Brattle Street begins in the absolute heart of Harvard Square. And there is the out-of-town news kiosk, now closed, by the way. It once upon a time was a newsstand with news from all over the world. I loved going in there to get my Financial Times on Saturday mornings. And the city is now renovating this. We'll see what they do with it. Perhaps it'll become an information center. You can see an information kiosk here, an elevator down to the subway. So here's the entrance to the T, and there's a Starbucks, CVS, there's JFK Street. And you can see here at the beginning of Brattle Street, this used to be the Curious George bookstore, is a large building under renovation. And this complex, which extends up JFK Street and up Brattle Street, it's a Flatiron building at the corner, is known as the Abbot. And let's just take a look at, there's the project highlighted in this YouTube video. And we're looking down on Brattle Street here. Gives you a sense of its scale and scope. It encompasses, the project does, 3 buildings. So these 3 buildings are the Abbot at 1-7 JFK Street, the Corcoran Building at 9-11 JFK, and then 18 Brattle. And project is going to be known as the Regency Centers. And the Abbot is how it's being marketed. And it'll comprise retail, office, and restaurant space when it's all done. And they probably lucked out with the lack of foot traffic in the square in 2020, just since the construction, I'm sure, became easier. And it's ongoing. There's Cardullo's, a famous gourmet shop in the heart of Harvard Square on Brattle Street. And you can see there's a variety of shops and services along Brattle Street in the square, some of which have closed. No surprise, this Crimson Corner newsstand used to be right at the heart of Harvard Square, where Brattle Street starts. And then it moved over to this location, and it has since closed. And then here on the left is Brattle Hall, home to the Brattle Movie Theater. And the Brattle Movie Theater is an iconic destination on Brattle Street. It's also home, as you see here, to Longfellow, the restaurant and bar. And there's just so much to love about the Brattle Movie Theater. And Here's its entrance along the left side of the building. At this time, it used to be out front. You'd go down and under. Now you go to the side and under to enter the movie theater. And they show a mix of foreign, independent, and classic films. It was established as an art house movie theater in 1947 by Harvard graduates Cyrus Harvey and Bryant Holiday. And this duo also established the Janus Film Enterprise to acquire and distribute world cinema. And if you have a subscription to Criterion Channel or collection online, you'll notice the Janus insignia at the start of many films, since they were involved in their distribution. And so, wow, it's an amazing mix of films that come on at the Brattle. And, going back to when they started showing foreign films in 1953, staples included Kurosawa, Bergman, Fellini, and Truffaut. And of course, they're famous, the Brattle is, for their Humphrey Bogart film screenings during the week of final exams at Harvard. That's a tradition that started in the late 1950s. And I can even remember it happening when I was a Harvard student in the 80s. So my experience of seeing films at the Brattle actually begins in 1985 when I arrived as a Harvard student. And I essentially had my film education at this cinema, and it's just with one screen, and it has an unusual and wonderful rear projection system to show the films that they put up on the screen. And, it's just so special. Here I am. I took this picture inside. Well, I say here I am, but this picture on the right of the screen, actually, that's a notice for one of my favorite films of all time, French musical, The Young Girls of Roquefort. And then there on the left is a poster for Blue, a wonderful film I have seen at the Brattle. Here's a shot of the seating area facing out as if you're standing on the stage. And there's a mural on the back wall that was preserved from the former old Casablanca restaurant in the building, which is no more. So, gosh, the Brattle is just such a wonderful piece of Brattle Street. And I'm lucky to have seen so many movies here over the years. As it happens, behind the Brattle is my former real estate office, where I worked for 16 years. Now, my office is on the other side of Harvard Square. So I've spent a lot of time on Brattle Street and at this address, both in the movie theater and behind it in my former real estate office. Right next door is 42 Brattle. And this is now the main facility, this little house behind the white fence, for the Cambridge Center for Adult Education. And as it happens, it is known as the William Brattle House. It was built in 1727 for Colonel Major William Brattle Jr. And he's the gentleman who, as far as we know, is the one who gives his name to Brattle Street. He was a decorated military hero in the French and Indian War, and a loyalist who sided with the British Crown at the time of the American Revolution. And in 1774, an angry mob surrounded his house, as he was a loyalist supporting the Crown, and forced him to flee. So, not the most glorious of exits for Mr. Brattle, or should I say, General Major William Brattle Jr. That's great that it's the Cambridge Adult Ed Center today. They have a variety of programs. Once upon a time, I've taken a couple classes there as part of my Cambridge journey. So it's nice that they have this restored and it serves their needs today for classes. Right next door is this rather distinctive building by architect Benjamin Thompson that dates from 1969. And as you can see here on the lower floors, it now houses an anthropology store. But when it was first opened in 1969, it was home to design research. And this store, founded by Benjamin Thompson, is really an incredible store. And this book that I have a picture of on the screen is all about the history of design research, the store that brought modern living to American homes. And there's Ben Thompson, the architect. It actually is the case that design research was founded and initially opened across the street in a 19th century wood frame mansard house at 57 Brattle, but then it moved in 69 to this wonderful building. And you can see here, once upon a time, the store enjoyed all floors, and the picture is sort of from 69, I would think, with that VW Bug in the car in front of it. And I think this is a famous Ezra Stolman photograph. It just, with it lit up, it really brings home how special it is, with its flat concrete slabs supported by interior columns and enclosed by frameless tempered glass walls, which is really special, how those glass walls meet at the corner without a corner. And this store, DR, as it was known, introduced the concept of the lifestyle store. So they carried modern European furnishings and Scandinavian design and an eclectic range of exclusive products. Most famously, they were the U.S. rep for finished clothing and textiles of Finnish manufacturer Marimekko. And, so it was like a destination and an experience. And I think all the lifestyle stores since owe a great debt to DR, Design Research. This wasn't the only DR. They did expand. They ended up opening stores in Hyannisport, as well as in New York City on Lexington Avenue and East 57th Street, and another one in San Francisco. And they even actually then followed with still other stores in some malls in different cities in the country. And they were operational until 1978. At that point, this building was taken over by Crate and Barrel. I remember going in that era. They were in the store from 79, or the building from 79 to 2009. And it's been an anthropology store ever since. You can see some of the products that DR carried. And this book is a beautiful history that tells the tale and shares wonderful photos of the store and the things they carried. So not to be missed is this beautiful building. And it's fun to go in the anthropology store today. They do a good job with their window displays. You can see they just have 3 of the 5 stories, and then there's some office space up above. So it would be wonderful for someone to reclaim this and use the entire building as it was initially used, as, a place you could visit all levels. And I would love to see that happen. We'll see what happens. As you go further down Brattle Street, here's Toscano, Italian restaurant. And I have had the good fortune of dining here on many occasions. The Charles Cherney team at Compass, we like to gather here for our holiday meal. And I've been fortunate to sit here as well with my wife and daughter and my mom and enjoy some family meals. It's a nice restaurant, and has a nice vibe and a nice bar area as well. Next to it is Tess, women's clothing store that moved from a larger space in the heart of the square when the construction on the Abbott began. And next to it is L.A. Burdick's, a little chocolate shop and cafe. There's the blacksmith house. And then this sort of nondescript, imposing concrete-clad building is Gutman, the library at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. It sits on the side on Appian Way, which is a great name for a street to find your way to the Harvard Graduate School of Education buildings. And then further down Brattle on the left is the American Repertory Theater, which was founded in 1979 by Robert Brustein, its first artistic director. And it's connected, of course, to Harvard University. And they offer instruction in acting and directing to students. And it's, as they say, expanding the boundaries of theater. You know, it's known for experimental productions. And they have a regular repertory theater season each year. And they have a good following of people who come out to support the theater. So that's the ART, the art. As we continue further down Brattle, on the right is Radcliff Yard, which is a green space surrounded by a number of Harvard buildings, including the Schlesinger Library. And then here on the left, just past it, is this beautiful piece of property, that open green space, and a circle drive, or a half circle drive, leading to the building. This is the Greenleaf House at 76 Brattle Street. And it was built, if you can imagine, as a private residence in 1859. And it was purchased in 1905 by Radcliffe College. And today it houses the Radcliffe Dean. And it's just special to walk by it. And for it to be preserved, you can see here the brick sidewalks, the pathway winding back into the heart of Harvard Square. We're heading out in this direction. Brick building maintained by Harvard for rentals. Cronkite Center on the left, and graduate student housing. And then essentially when we come to this stop sign with Ash Street on the left and Mason Street on the right, we're sort of leaving the commercial district, which is Harvard Square. And now we're going to be heading into the mainly and mostly residential portion of the street. And here on the left at 90 Brattle is the Mary Fisk Stoughton House, which is a national landmark. It's the house here behind the brick wall. And it's so well maintained. It was designed by Henry Hobson Richardson in the shingle style in 1883. And, you know, it's a house with a minimum of ornament and shingles that stretch over the building's irregular volumes like a skin. And there it is from the front. It's the house that you find at the stop sign that starts the residential portion of the block. Across the street is a campus, there it is, that now belongs to Lesley University. It used to be the Episcopal Divinity School, and now this beautiful 4.4 acre Brattle campus is owned by Lesley University, which is based in Cambridge, and the other portion of the campus is in Porter Square, and it mainly focuses on the arts and education. And they acquired this Brattle campus in 2018, and it features 5 buildings, including the St. John's Memorial Chapel. Across the street from it is the Sarah and Emma Carey house at 92 Brattle. And I listed and sold this home back in 2013. It's a stick-style house built in 1881. It has a delightful front garden and a big, beautiful backyard as well. And after it's sold, it got a significant whole house renovation, and it's glorious with all the wonderful work done to preserve it. Right next door is this beauty, behind the concrete wall. And this is 94 Brattle. And I listed and sold this house in 2014. It's a Georgian-style house dating from 1746. And during the time of the American Revolution, it was the medical headquarters of the Continental Army. Dr. Benjamin Church was named Surgeon General of the Continental Army. And it turns out he was revealed as a traitor and was held prisoner in this house until his exile from the American colonies in 1778. And when I listed this house for sale back in 2014, the seller showed me the room that was believed to be the one that Dr. Benjamin Church was held prisoner in. And I felt something in that room. So maybe there's a ghost that still inhabits that house. As we go further down Brattle, on the left is the Mormon Church with its steeple. I remember when that had caught fire and they had to restore it. And just beyond it is the Longfellow House. There it is, now maintained by the National Park Service. And it's at 105 Brattle Street. And Washington used the house, George Washington, as his military headquarters in 1775, 1776. And thereafter, in the 1800s, from 1837 to 1882, it became the home of the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and he lived here. And it's known today by his name. It's known as the Longfellow House. So right across the way from it is Longfellow Park, and it extends almost entirely all the way to the river. It's great that that green space exists, and it's a destination. It's open as a museum, and they have special events, and they have concerts and other things in the gardens at the house in the summertime. And it's not that far a walk from the heart of Harvard Square, so many people will walk out from Brattle Street at least this far. And, look, as we continue down the street, you can see there's some big, beautiful homes, most all of which are very well maintained. You can see that a number of the homes feature privacy walls or fencing or shrubbery, or all three. This is one that I sold here back in 2012. And my client proceeded with a wonderful renovation thereafter, and it's beautiful today. Not uncommon for someone to buy a home on Brattle and do a extensive and thoughtful and beautiful renovation. What's interesting about Brattle Street is that it's got a divided yellow line, as you see here, and it has traffic moving in either direction, and there's even and can be larger trucks, so it's a busy street, and it's hard to imagine that once upon a time that Tory Row, or the King's Highway as it was known before the American Revolution, Brattle Street, was once the countryside. As late as 1759, a Harvard student was writing home reporting, quote, "Many bears killed at Cambridge and several persons killed by them." So it's hard to imagine in today's modern world that this used to be the hinterlands, and there were just a handful of houses and a lot of forest and still some bears. And, after the initial set of mansions were built prior to the American Revolution, it just came to be that the street extended itself and expanded, and additional beautiful homes were added over time. into the 18th, 19th, and even 20th century. Here's where Craigie, Sparks, and Brattle Street meet, and just beyond it on the right is the Armenian Church. They have a nice piece of property on Brattle Street. They host lectures, bringing in some famous speakers. What a beautiful street. Brick sidewalks, some big trees. Next up is the house belonging to the Historical Society. I think we're coming up to it. There's Appleton Street. There it is. So the house, its formal address is 159 Brattle. We're looking at it. It's the Hooper Lee's Nichols House, and it was built in 1685, and it's the second oldest home in Cambridge, still standing. It became the headquarters of the Cambridge Historical Society in 1957, and they're still there today. They have a great website, and you can rent the space out for special events. I remember attending a retirement party for one of my colleagues there. That was fun. Great setting. You can see some of these tall walls. Crossing Channing Street here and Channing Place on the right. This beautiful house set back on Brattle Street behind the white fence is the Ruggles Fairweather House, and it was owned by George Ruggles, a loyalist who fled Cambridge in the 1770s, and he sold the house to Thomas Fairweather, who during the siege of Boston had his house confiscated by the Continental Army so that it could be used as a hospital. The Fairweathers moved to another home nearby during the siege, and they reclaimed this home after the British evacuation. So interesting how Brattle Street has so much American Revolutionary history. Love that these homes are still with us and preserved. As we continue down Brattle, we reach this stoplight with Elmwood Ave. And once upon a time, we're going down Elmwood Ave now, this was an extension and part of Brattle Street. And I want to take us to the end. It's a dead end. It doesn't actually connect through to Mount Auburn Street. And I'm sure the residents who live on this street love that it doesn't connect because it reduces traffic to hardly any cars at all. And I wanted to show you at the very end on the right is 33 Elmwood Avenue, which is known as the Oliver Jerry Lowell House. And let me see if I can show you a bigger picture of it. There it is on a winter's day in 2008. Here it is on our Google tour. And it was built by John Nutting in 1767 for the loyalist Thomas Oliver, the last lieutenant governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, and a member of a wealthy merchant family. The home was abandoned by Oliver at the outset of the American Revolutionary War. Many a loyalist did flee. And you can see how big this piece of land is. It was originally part of a 100-acre estate. And after the revolution, it ended up being purchased by Elbridge Gerry. And then subsequently, the home was purchased by the Lowell family, and it was home of the poet James Russell Lowell, from 1819 to 1891. So he was a lifelong resident of the home. And these days, It's home to the president of Harvard. The Lowell family bequeathed the property to Harvard. So lucky the president of Harvard to get to live at Elmwood on Elmwood Avenue, formerly part of Brattle Street and now just off Brattle. So we're back on Brattle, going through the light here at Elmwood, and look at that beautiful home. I mean, classic New England residence right on Brattle. There's just so many beautiful homes. As a top residential real estate agent in the community since 1999, I've noticed and enjoyed and appreciated the renovation and restoration of many homes on Brattle Street and surrounding streets over the years. So, it's good and it's getting better all the time with the effort to restore and preserve the homes. As we come further down Brattle, that's Lexington Avenue there on the right. I lived on that street for a number of years. And then as we approach the light at Fresh Pond Parkway, we can see Lowell Park. There's another shot of the park on a sunny day with blue sky. And it's nice that there's a park at the end of Brattle, or approaching the end of Brattle as you approach Fresh Pond Parkway. As you cross over, the scale of Brattle Street becomes a little smaller, as do the homes. They're still substantial, though. And at the very end of Brattle, on the right are the side streets that open into the Larchwood neighborhood off Brattle, is a pair of brick buildings at the very foot of the street where it meets Mount Auburn. And I'm looking back, I'm turning around here. And so these are the Larches at 240-244 Brattle, went up in 1923. And next to it sits the Birches at 246-250 Brattle, that went up in 1924. They were both designed by architect Roscoe B. Witten, and garage bays were added several years later behind the Larches at 240-244 Brattle. So many of the residences in that building today have garage parking. These are two condo associations. And I've got on the screen here recent sales at these two buildings in the last several years. I'm making this video in 2021, so you can see here's one for $580, $700, another for $700, $702, $707, $730, $830. So, in the sevens for the most part are the sale events in the building or buildings. They're next to each other. They look like twins. So, it's not every single property in or on Brattle Street, I should say, that's over $1 million. You can live in one of these condos for something in the sevens or eights. Now, there is, of course, more expensive real estate on Brattle Street. Just this past week, I showed 165 Brattle, which we're looking at on the screen right now, listed by the Petrowski-Jones Group of Compass. And here's a picture of the house. It has this front porch and portico hidden from view from the street. It's a side entrance. For the most part, you come up the drive and enter on the left. But you can see the grand living room with the crown molding and the light and the ceiling height. Wow, wonderful shot. It was a treat to show this home. Period detail. Look at the paneling. Wonderful. Wood burning fireplace. Look at the ceiling. It's just extraordinary. It's almost like you would imagine it would be like coming into one of these grand homes on Brattle Street. And so you can learn more about what's for sale and what's available by reaching out to me I'm Charles Cherney. I'm a top residential real estate serving buyers and sellers in Cambridge and neighboring Somerville. I mentioned in passing, I lived on Lexington Avenue off Brattle Street. I know the Brattle Street neighborhood very well, having listed and sold numerous properties in this neighborhood over the years. And I have an affinity for it with having walked every street and looked, at least from the sidewalk, at every house. I love it and would love to share more with you about it and be of service as you give thought to buying the right home or selling for the best price in this lovely West Cambridge neighborhood off Brattle Street. You can find me by text, telephone, or email, and my contact information is noted below. And I welcome the opportunity to hear from you and be of service. Take care.